Two possible outcomes of Eve's life around Christmas play out in parallel. She meets the dreamy CEO, Aiden Green, but her story with him depends on whether she boards the plane to Los Angeles. Eve has planned a Christmas-themed bar mitzvah party that seems to be going well. She checks up on all the guests and arrangements till her boss, Elizabeth, arrives. Elizabeth was sure a combination like this would never work, but she's impressed that Eve managed to pull this off and thinks bigger things are in store for her. A waiter comes to clarify a doubt, and Eve goes back to make sure everything is perfect. Elizabeth asks her to meet at her office the next morning. Eve discusses how hard it was to pull off this party. Her friend, Leela, also complains about working long hours and never getting a raise. Eve decides to head home, but Leela wants to spend more time before she goes off for 10 days with her boyfriend to Vermont. Eve agrees to stay for 15 minutes and continues drinking as Leela leaves. Aiden joins Eve at the bar and asks about what she's drinking. He shows her that he's having a pineapple daiquiri too. It's her favorite drink, even if it's embarrassing. She compliments him for being a man of taste and being comfortable with his manhood. He jokes about her discussing his manhood and properly introduces himself. He heads behind the bar to refill her drink. Since he has some experience, he tries to guess what she does and comes up with artist or a professional golfer. Eve points out that she was the captain of the mini golf team in school and even went to art school, but she explains that she's an event planner and gives him her card. She discusses how she managed to pull off a Christmas-themed bar mitzvah that day. When she asks what he does, he claims it's some boring tech stuff. He's in town to meet venture capitalists and is flying out the next morning. He offers to let her get back to her friend, but she claims she's leaving and plans to watch It's a Wonderful Life at home. Aiden is amused by her and is about to leave, but she asks him to call her if he has any party planning needs in New York. Leela teases Eve for flirting with him, but Eve reminds her she has a boyfriend. She doesn't think she will ever meet Aiden again since he flies out the next day. Eve's annoying colleague, Matt, comes over to give her some gossip. He knows Elizabeth is planning a big announcement. He thinks when she opens a new office in Los Angeles, she will choose him to run it. He offers to put in a good word for her if she wants to work for him. Elizabeth asks Eve to join her. She asks if Eve has heard about the next generation social network company, Gobble. They're throwing a no-expense-spared Christmas Eve party to attract investors before their relaunch. Elizabeth knows this account is so huge that they can go past their annual target and own half of the tech sector by next year. Things have been tight recently, and Elizabeth needs this account to expand. The party is in Los Angeles, so Eve claims she can't go since she has a trip planned. Elizabeth explains that the CEO of Gobble, who turns out to be Aiden, requested her personally. Aiden claims he has heard great things about Eve's Christmas-themed bar mitzvah from a friend. Elizabeth recalls the time 3 years ago when she was trying to plan an impossible book launch. Eve just handed her over a sketch randomly, and she hired her on the spot. It was her first and only impulsive move in 17 years of owning the company. She assures Aiden his event is in great hands. Eve claims she's flattered, but she's unavailable. Elizabeth asks Aiden for some time alone with her. She reminds Eve how important this event is for her company. Eve claims she can't do it because her boyfriend, Darren, is taking her to Vermont. Elizabeth thinks they only get such an account once in a lifetime. She threatens to give it to Matt. Eve reluctantly agrees to do it, and they inform Aiden about the good news. He's grateful because he needs to get this party right. He's about to catch a flight, but asks to see Eve the next day in Los Angeles. Elizabeth asks her to pack and has decided to send Matt to help her. Darren is busy with his video game when Eve comes back to the apartment. He only pauses his game when she claims she has some big news. She reminds him of how she has wanted to make her boss notice her. She informs him about signing Gobble as an account. He claims to be happy for her, but is constantly distracted by the game. When she explains she needs to fly out to LA till Christmas and miss their Vermont trip, he finally pays attention. She offers to go to Vermont with him for New Year's, but Darren already has plans for Atlantic City with a friend. She tries to make him understand this is a big deal for her at work. She feels they will finally be able to buy a place after this. He still thinks she's choosing work over him and taunts her for having a better degree, but he gives in when she suggests he can go on his own. He remembers he has a friend who wants to go skiing. She also thinks this time apart could be good for them. Eve wakes up late the next day because Darren forgot to set the alarm. She rushes out of the apartment and offers to pay the cab guy extra. She calls Matt from the cab and claims she is trying her best to reach on time. She arrives when the boarding for the flight has already begun. She notices a man closing the boarding gate and begs him to let her enter. She arrives just in time to get comfortable in first class. She gets a complimentary drink and toasts to Matt in economy class. In an alternate reality, she breaks her heel while dragging her bags at the airport. She arrives just when the gate closes and asks the man to open it. He refuses to do it and doesn't care if her job depends on this. As Eve in the first reality prepares for takeoff from her seat, Eve in the second one watches the flight leave without her. Elizabeth calls her on the plane and reminds her that she's representing her at the event. She feels like if this goes well, she can choose her to run the Los Angeles office. She notices misses her drinking in the morning and asks her to indulge herself. After the call, Eve asks for another drink. The Eve who misses her flight tries to get another one for her meeting with Aiden that afternoon. There's a major storm in the Midwest, so all the flights are delayed. The attendant can only get her a flight that evening. She excuses herself to take the call with Elizabeth, who wonders why she's still at the airport. She informs Elizabeth about missing the flight because of her alarm, broken heel, and cab troubles. Elizabeth tries to calm herself down with a tactic she learned in yoga class. Elizabeth has decided to drop her 3 projects, cancel her Aspen trip, and fly later that day to Los Angeles to save the Gobble account. She knows Eve doesn't understand the sacrifices she is making. She feels Eve could have hired a cab to the airport earlier and arrived 3 hours before time. Eve suggests taking a later flight that evening and meeting the client for drinks, but Elizabeth can't tolerate such lapses in her team and fires her. She asks Eve to get her parents to take her back in their bookstore. She can't even file for unemployment because she was contracted as a consultant. Matt is clearly sore about Eve flying first class and comes over to taunt her. She offers him a drink since she gets free refills. Matt claims he prefers Coach since it helps him think like common people. Eve knows he's trying to get her to switch seats. The attendant asks him to go back, and Eve thanks her. After losing her job, the other Eve arrives home to find Darren having intercourse with Tiffany. He claims he was trying to be there for her as a friend since she was upset. Eve realizes she is the friend he was going to take to Vermont. Eve makes her get out of her house. She asks Darren to leave too, since he doesn't contribute to rent or bills. He claims he loves her, but she doesn't want to put up with his nonsense. Eve loves her grand suite in Los Angeles and finds a note from Elizabeth. She asks her to bring her a game to the meeting and has sent over some clothes. When they enter the Gobble office, Matt is sure he never wants to go back to New York again. Aiden comes to them in casuals and a scooter, and Eve introduces Matt as her project assistant. Aiden shows them around the office and informs them about his rainmaker, Tino Costa. He has helped relaunch the site, but this Christmas Eve party is very important to them. They are hoping for some investor attention, and Eve assures him they can handle it. He informs them about having the party at the movie star Hugo Sable's estate for 300 people. Eve feels like they need live entertainment for this and some solid visuals. Aiden has thought about a DJ and a chocolate fountain, so she claims they can make it happen. Eve back home rants to drag queens about her situation. She has decided to give up on men, but they think not all men are bad. They feel Eve is too young and pretty to give up on love like this. A man who has heard the conversation also agrees and assures Eve things will get better. She feels like she has wasted 2 years of her life. She might have even married Darren if she didn't miss that flight. She wants to find one nice guy, but Leela also seems to think this is for the best. She assures Eve she is the nicest and smartest girl she has known, and better things are coming for her. Eve gives Aiden and Tino a presentation about choosing Hollywood glamour as their theme with a reboot for the internet age. In the middle of her presentation, she's unable to make it work. Matt tries to fix it for her, but a lot of her bikini pictures show up. Tino asks for some copies of them, and Eve nervously explains they're from a girls' trip. When Matt gets back to the presentation, Eve continues to explain what she has in mind. She has already booked Diana DeGarmo from American Idol as their talent, and Aiden feels that's a great idea. Tino also loves her concepts and her. He thinks if Eve can pull this off, she will get offers from big tech companies like Facebook and Google, and even Al Kim, who's coming from Korea. He thinks Eve has done great work and asks her to reserve a dance for him. Aiden loves her work too and thanks her. Matt apologizes for what happened with the presentation, but Eve knows he did it deliberately. She asks him to never pull something like this again, or she will fire him. She instructs him to look at the lighting bids, and he taunts her for sounding like Elizabeth. Eve apologizes to Aiden for what happened, but he thinks her plan is great. He also jokes with her about Tino seriously wanting her bikini pictures. She wonders why he is so nice to her. Aiden explains that he built the company out of his parents' garage with $5 in his pocket. He appreciates hard work and even asks her for a drink later. Eve feels bad when she gets a call from Darren and claims she should probably work. Aiden understands and asks for a rain check. Eve wakes up in her room with the worst hangover and no calls or messages. She calls her mother, Ellen, to let her know she's planning to come home because things aren't going well for her. Matt can't get the flowers Eve wants, but she insists it has to be Asiatic lilies for Aiden. Matt makes fun of his choice of flowers, but she asks him to think outside the box. Aiden overhears her telling Matt to call them again and make it happen. Matt also informs her about catering charging extra per head. She asks him to get the manager and get her to speak to him a minute later. She gets a call from Darren, who is driving to Vermont. She claims she is busy and asks to call him later. She thinks his friend, Cole, is with him, but Darren is secretly driving with Tiffany. Darren asks her to stay quiet, and Eve doesn't realize there's a woman with him. She assumes Darren is calling back again, but she gets a call from someone claiming to be Garland McAdams Roman 3. He pretends to be a customer relations specialist who wants to solve her Asiatic lilies problem, but it's actually Aiden calling from his office and flirting with her by asking what she's wearing. He describes her exact outfit, so she realizes who he is and starts walking towards his office. He gets shocked when she asks what he is wearing and describes his casual and underrated look aptly. She feels he's someone who's trying just hard enough to look like he's not trying with clothes. He claims he's but she finds him in his office and teases him about it. He claims it was a wrong number and asks her about the progress. She's sure he will be blown away, but feels weird for not being in New York for Christmas. He suggests she should get out of her comfort zone a little, and she agrees. Ellen is surprised to see Eve at her door. She didn't get her message and doesn't know how to work the answering machine. She calls her husband, Wesley, to meet her, as Eve explains her trip got canceled. Wesley is glad to see her, but wonders why she's not in Los Angeles. Eve explains that she lost her job, so she wanted to help them in the bookstore. Wesley has won a 2-week cruise to Bermuda, and her parents are trying to rekindle their flame with the trip. They ask about Darren, but Eve explains what happened with him too. She claims she just wanted to spend some time at home. She learns her parents have converted her room to a sewing room and her father's gym. Her parents feel bad, but they did it because they thought things were going well for Eve. She decides to spend the holidays with Leela instead and asks them to enjoy their trip. Elizabeth calls Eve when she's making preparations for the event. She has heard from Aiden that things are going very well. Elizabeth asks her to keep it up and make sure everything is perfect. The singer, Diana, arrives and thinks the party looks great. Eve offers to thank her properly for agreeing to this when she's in New York. Matt tries to greet Diana, but Eve asks him to show her to her room. Aiden already thinks this will be the party of a lifetime. He wonders if Eve has been taking some time off for herself to have fun. She points out that there's a lot of work to do, but he thinks she should take his requests as her client. He wants her to have fun for 2 hours and promises to bring her back to work. He takes her for some adventure rides, and they end up playing mini golf. She builds up his next putt and teases him about it. He loves how competitive she is and continues to banter cheerfully. The other Eve is playing mini golf with Leela after her parents rejected her. She is jealous of Leela because she seems to have her life in control. Eve feels alone and thinks losing the job might have made her resume worse. Leela asks her to stop feeling sorry for herself all the time. Aiden is glad he convinced her for some time off because she seems to be in her element. She promises a snow cone if he misses this ball. He teases her about betting and winking at him. After a strong putt from Eve, Leela suggests she should work for her. It's not big money, but she knows someone dedicated like Eve can manage to earn extra. As her first assignment, Leela asks her to paint her a Christmas mural on the bar window. She's a talented artist, but has left that life a long time ago. Leela feels her talents are wasted in a cubicle and convinces her to do it. Eve explains to Aiden how she used her charm at the airport to make the attendant open the door for her. She thinks if she had missed this flight, Elizabeth would have fired her, and she would have been playing mini golf with Leela. Aiden finds it strange that she thinks a career-defining moment depended on her boarding that plane. Aiden believes in destiny and thinks whatever is meant to be will happen. He tells her about the time he played baseball in college with full scholarship. One day, when he picked up the bat, he realized he doesn't belong and left in the middle of the game. He asks her for lunch and challenges her to have pepperoni pizza with him. He jokes about having a lot of kids, but clarifies that he's single. He broke up with his long-term girlfriend a few months ago because she wanted some space. He used to think it's for the best, but claims he is very sure about it recently. She knows he's flirting, and he asks if she has anyone special back home. Before she can answer, a waiter drops a drink on her, and she rushes to the bathroom to clean it up. As Darren calls, she realizes she shouldn't be flirting with Aiden when Darren is about to propose. Eve reads the California news and learns that Elizabeth is taking the company in a new direction after losing a huge client. Darren finds her at the coffee shop and praises how great she looks. He has a job as a bike messenger and wants to pay her back for last month's rent and utilities. He feels disgusted with how he treated her and wants another chance. Eve doesn't think she can take him back with the image of him cheating in her mind. He claims he can do anything for her, but she asks him to go back in time and not cheat on her. Darren calls to check up on Eve when she's planning the party. He claims he got lucky to get a room in Vermont with a hot tub. When he claims he misses her, she asks if he was going to propose in Vermont. She feels like they have been together for some time and should be able to take the next step. He tries to assure her that he loves her, but she wants to make sure they want the same things. Tiffany calls him to the hot tub, so he asks Eve to not think too much about this. Aiden overhears this whole conversation and walks away in disappointment. Elizabeth calls Eve at night, and she assures her things are going great. Elizabeth claims she might be drunk, but wants Eve to know she's proud of her. She wants to see Eve exactly where she is in 20 years. She has also thought about her future and thinks Eve can have the West Coast office if the party goes as planned. She thinks it's in the best interest of Elizabeth Cole Events. Eve feels grateful, but Elizabeth explains how much sacrifice it takes to run a successful business. While most people are spending Christmas with their loved ones, Elizabeth is on her way to get a massage. She wants Eve to know choices are important and hopes she makes the best decisions for herself. As the Eve in Los Angeles throws herself into party planning perfectly, the Eve in California starts painting a beautiful mural. Leela and the drag queens love what she has done with it. As Aiden continues to ignore Eve, Matt feels like he might be silent because he's nervous about the party. Tino doesn't know the details, but thinks whatever Eve did has broken Aiden's heart. Tino is talented at asking people for money, but he knows Aiden is the kind of guy who can create something original. They both know he's a good person and very talented. Tino feels Aiden has been happier since Eve arrived, but he seems to have lost all interest in work again. Eve calls Darren and breaks up with him. She feels they're holding each other back and asks him to vacate her place. Gavin recognizes Eve as the woman with a broken heart. She claims she's only waitressing to help out Lika with the holidays. He thinks she looks much better now. He comments on the mural in the front window and asks her to give the artist his card. He runs a small gallery in the village and wants to talk to them. The drag queens are excited about Eve's big break in an art gallery. Eve walks up to Gavin's gallery and starts painting for him. They continue to hang her new paintings, and Gavin puts up her name at the front of his gallery. At the Christmas Eve party, Matt admits he always wanted her gig, but now he thinks she has done great work and he couldn't match up to it. She feels like he wants something because he's sucking up. He reminds her that she sounds more like Elizabeth now. He has never liked her, but he used to respect that she was always the nice one who treated people well. He feels like she has changed since she got to Los Angeles and asks her to reflect on who she has become. Tino brings Aiden to Eve and compliments her for the amazing work. A lot of people have already asked for her business card. He knows she will make a lot of money, but he takes off her coat and asks her to spend more time with Aiden. When he leaves to flirt with some models, Eve apologizes for leading Aiden on. Aiden thinks she was just being charming to get him as a client. She clarifies that this was not her part of the plan, and she always wanted to be a painter. She admits she had a boyfriend when she came there, but they broke it off because he's unemployed and lazy. She feels like she doesn't deserve Aiden, but wants another chance. Diana announces a duet with her partner. Eve remembers Silent Night was the song that was playing when she first met Aiden. She asks him to dance under the mistletoe and claims she might have something to do with its placement. When they kiss, she gets a flashback of her other life if she had missed the plane. She instantly knows she doesn't belong there and runs away in the middle of the party. When she breaks her heel, she gets a vision of the time she broke it at the airport. Eve refuses to drink on her way back and arrives at her apartment. She reminds Darren he was supposed to leave and finds Tiffany with him. Darren tries to justify this, but Tiffany clarifies that they have been cheating for a long time. Eve doesn't feel bad about the breakup anymore and throws both of them out of her apartment. She gets a message from Aiden claiming he can't get her out of his head. Eve talks to Lila when it starts snowing and informs her about catching Darren cheating. Lila feels like she should have kicked him out a long time ago and is proud of her. She also thinks now is the right time to contact Aiden. Eve doesn't know how he will respond after she abandoned him during the party. Lila has seen the way Aiden looked at her in the bar and knows it's for real. The Eve who is back from Los Angeles walks down the streets and comes across the gallery. The Eve who stayed in California touches her through the glass and they seem to merge. The artist Eve now feels she had an experience that felt real but was only a dream. Gavin asks her to enjoy Christmas time and take a break. Eve exchanges an awkward look with Elizabeth on the street and moves forward. Aiden finds her and claims she broke his heart when she missed her plane. Lila showed him the mural Eve made, and he thinks she's very talented. Aiden claims his party was a disaster after she didn't show up and her crazy boss did. Eve explains that she got fired too. Aiden is now in California because he thinks the weather is perfect for Christmas. He just felt like he needed to come back there. He feels maybe the party getting ruined was for the best. He doesn't want to be the next Facebook, but become the first gobble instead. He feels bad they couldn't work together and that she just missed her flight by 10 seconds. They wonder how different things would have been if she had made it to the flight, but he still believes things happen for a reason. He also thinks she was meant to be an artist and realized she was with the wrong guy by staying back. He asks her out for some hot cocoa because he is freezing, but he points out the mistletoe Eve is examining and reminds her there's a rule about it. She feels like he did it on purpose, and he doesn't deny it. As they kiss, the moment exactly resembles the mural Eve painted on the window.